There we go. Hi, everybody. So, good afternoon. We're here to discuss the state of machine translation in our near and dear localization industry. And I've invited a very special and knowledgeable guest this afternoon in Konstantin Savenkov, who is the CEO of Intento. And Konstantin, I thought the best thing would be maybe for you to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit what Intento does and how it's relevant, so people that don't know you, I assume most people do, but people that don't know you can kind of get an idea.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a co-founder of the company. Also, my co-founder, who is CTO, he resides in London, so we're sort of on both sides.
Yeah.
And we both have AI experience. I'm very new to the localization industry. Maybe 5-6 years we're doing something with localization. And what we do, I would describe in this way. So, and maybe what's special about what we do. So, when you want to be local, it's not actually about translating stuff, right? Not only about translating stuff. It's about providing this authentic experience to users in their local languages. And through all their customer journeys, not only about product marketing or interface, it should include customer support and customer success and sales. And in many cases, you need to also provide your employees a way to work with multilingual content internally, regardless of what language they speak. So what we do, we provide this platform. And this language experience should be also consistent. So we have a platform where we can configure customized translation workflows so that then they can be integrated in different enterprise software systems across the board, so that the same models will be powering translation management systems where you translate marketing and your software strings translations and your customer support translations and knowledge bases and live chat and everything, to make sure that the whole customer journey is available in the local language, if it makes sense.
Yeah. It's really, really interesting with it. Does that mean, my mind drifted off right away when I heard you explain it like that. Does that mean that you can provide workflows with chatbots and real-time translation in instant messaging conversations? Is that part of the
well, that's what we're doing. I think about 95 or 97% of the volumes which go through our platform, it's actually real-time translations for live chats and chatbots, and also for this long-tail content where you do not even pre-translate it, you just do it on demand when a user came to your website, like user-generated content, knowledge bases. We just translate it just in time for the user to read. Yeah.
Awesome. I just want to quickly take care of a couple of housekeeping items so people that are new to the platform know. Hi, Fabricia. Know how we typically run my LocDiscussions. It's not meant to be an interview of Stefan with Konstantin. It's supposed to be a group discussion. And I would say feel free to either put your questions in the chat, or if you're brave enough, turn on your microphone and jump right in. I would ask you not to raise your hand and wait for me to find you, because that's usually the toughest thing about running this. I'm too concentrated on keeping the conversation going to actually read what's happening in the chat. But Erica is here, so she usually helps me a little bit with that as well. So if you can keep an eye out, Erica, and if there's a good question, alert us to it, that would be great. And again, feel free to jump in if you have a question for Konstantin. It's not meant to be just a conversation of me and him. I really want you involved as much as possible. So barge right in, European style. Don't ask for permission. Just speak up when there's a lull in the conversation. In any case, Konstantin, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because Intento puts out this yearly State of Machine Translation report that is really interesting. And for the people that don't know it, maybe you can explain a little bit what it is about. And then I would like to dive right in and pick your brain about some of the emerging trends and things that you feel are happening in the industry with regards to that.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, the first report we published in around, I think, late 2017, and it was just a byproduct of our market research. We noticed back then, a funny thing that if you look at machine translation systems, the price difference between them is around like 300 times if you look at the price per million characters. And we just had a question, is it correlated with the quality? Because what you would expect that, you know, expensive systems will provide more quality than cheap systems, and that's why they're expensive, right? And we ran this evaluation, we found that it's not actually correlated. That we found that this quality landscape is quite complex. Different systems work better for different languages, for different domains. But it's not correlated with the price. And then we realized it's some very valuable piece of information for everyone to know, because that's not what you expect to be. And I think that's what we're running since then. So we currently have it annually. We just last couple of years, we also partnered with E2F to produce a specific data set for this report, which no one's seen this data. So there is no risk that there's any sort of rigging happened, somebody overfit on this data. It's cannot happen. And I think that's the main outcome, that the situation is still the same. So despite of all advancement in technology, it's far from being commodity. It's very far from being able to pick a single vendor and get the best quality for whatever you want. Otherwise, if you want to achieve now what we're evaluating, I think 11 language pairs now, both directions, which should be 22 language pairs, and I think around 9 different domains like financial, legal, and so on. And we see that you still need to have a solid portfolio of different models to work with to get the best quality. I think the most important outcome that is still true despite of everything that is happening around.
Yeah. By the way, as people are trickling in, feel free to share your LinkedIn handle in the chat and connect. If I'm not connected with you, feel free to send me a connection request for sure, but go ahead and connect with anybody within the meeting as well. I have a question for Konstantin. How do you think somebody's microphone is on? Hold on.
Straight empty.
There. My namesake Stefan had his microphone on. Konstantin, how has your machine translation hub evolved over the last couple of years with the advent of AI? What's the impact?
Hey, you know what we started with originally, what Hub was just a single API to different machine translation systems, because we've seen that from this report that you want to be able to work with few, or at least to be able to compare them, and for that we decided we need to provide a single API for them. So when you run when you implement your integration, you can work with them interchangeably. And what happened then, that different customization options appeared, and we have to develop like a part of our hub to like tools to automate customizing models, evaluating their quality. And then quite a big change which happened, I think, a couple of years ago was that our customers, they started to use machine translation across many systems, which I mentioned at the beginning, like from TMS to real-time live chats. And that's where we realized there is a crossroads. So different systems, those are different use cases. They impose different requirements to translation. So you either have to maintain a set of models for every connected system or do something else. And maintaining set of models per system is just infeasible because to give an idea, with some customers will have as many as 100 models customized for them because they work with 100 directions in language. And they may have 10, 20, 30 different systems connected to this set of models. So since no one wants to manage like a few thousand customized models, we should have found another way. And the way we found is that we keep the translation model the same, but depending on what system wants to use this model, we add certain pre-processing and post-processing. What we now call source quality improvement, automatic post-editing. For example, if you want to use your model in your live chat with customers, you want it to be polite, right? You need to modify text to be more formal. If it's your internal live chat for your company policy, it may need to be informal, and so on. So that was a big change. We moved from just sending requests to models to actually implementing workflows. But still, until like a year ago, most of the automation was around translation itself. We could not really automate easily things like checking text against the style guide, or we could not train a post-editor model. And what we got with generative AI, we now are able to automate much more things than just translation. That's why about a month ago we actually released a new version of the platform. We called it not Machine Translation Hub, but Language Hub. And now we think the following way is that you may have your perfect translation with perfect translation quality. It's still maybe quite a big gap to having perfect automatic localization. And to fill this gap, you need people with skills. And now suddenly we can automate those skills. We can automate some of the post-editing. We can automate transcreation. We can automate quality estimation. So sort of we expanding platform so that we can build workflows which consist of many different things we can do with language automatically.
Yeah.
So that's the main change.
Yeah. Hey, Konstantin,
and also we had to.
Oh, sorry, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say that, of course, we also needed to build tools to help developing those automatic language skills, which we released a few versions of our generative AI portal, which overall it's quite similar in the idea to, say, ChatGPT or tools like that, but we focus there on working with language, and we sort of make it more convenient to work with language tasks there.
Go ahead.
Yes, thanks. So, hi, this is Kata. Hi, Konstantin. So, question on what you've just said. I think it's really interesting to think about it as language automation more than machine translation and translation automation. How far are you from, or maybe you're already there, like in terms of when you're talking about MT implementation, it's not just the MT engine doing its work, but it's also that improvement, that automated quality P that feeds back into the machine. And so, you don't even think about it as several steps. It's just like what you get when you automate that process. Is that where you are currently, or is it still like, you need to have several implementations and, it's not like a one package, if you want?
Yeah, I think it's probably possible to do in the way you describe it, but that's not how we approach it.
I'm glad I gave you the idea, so that's great.
I think much like, imagine if you work with humans, right? Potentially you may put 15 different people with different skills on your translation task.
Mm-hmm.
But you won't be doing that because it will be too expensive nobody will give you so many FTEs, sorry. So
yes,
what you'll be doing,
correct.
you'll be adding person by person, you will be onboarding them and looking what's missing, what's the bottleneck, what's bottleneck in scaling that. And that's the same approach now with AI, because automating each step takes effort. It takes effort to get the data, to train those models, to find how, what's changed. And typically once you fix one of the bottlenecks, there's a new one in some place. You don't really know where you will see it. So that's the approach. We start with machine translation still. And machine translation today is a very, I would say very reliable technology. Mm-hmm. There's a very straightforward way how, based on the available data, you can figure out the systems you can work with. You can relatively quickly, in like 2-3 weeks, train them, evaluate them, pick the best one, pick backup one, and install into the process, into the existing workflows. Then you don't really know where the next bottleneck will be. So then what I typically do, we start with translation. Then we look at the feedback once it went to production. We look at how people edit this translation, if it's something related to translation management system, or we look at the end user feedback if it's something real time. And that it tells us what's the next bottleneck. So one of the bottlenecks maybe is that people, I don't know, it may be video, like subtitle translation, and we see that people edit it a lot for tone of voice done. Mm-hmm. And we need to address that, because maybe we use some universal tone of voice and we see that it's English to Korean. It requires very dedicated catering for the specific honorifics which used there. So we just see where's the bottleneck. Then we have cases where we do what we call source quality improvement, where basically we see that what post editors do, they mostly spend time not localizing to some locale. They spend time either improving the source or say localizing it from United States culture. Mm-hmm. Then it makes sense to focus there and add another step of automation in this place. We may see that post editors may start adding some very specific context to machine translations, which you cannot really embed on the machine translation step. And we would focus on automating this part. So it depends.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is that each use case is going to be different, obviously, and you might need to massage it, in different ways depending on what you're trying to get out of it. But in principle, is the vision that if you have, let's say, your translators or linguists, working on improving and feeding back into the AI, that can also be fed back into the machine, into the machine translation step as well, eventually. Yeah, is that the goal? I guess that's what I'm asking.
I would say it would feed one of these automation steps. It may be feedback for automatic post-editing step rather than machine translation.
I see. Okay.
It also is quite important that these things to address, they need to be identified, bottlenecks, they need to be identified based on data. Because what's sometimes happening is that humans, post-editors, they may be quite vocal about some problem. And based on what they say, it may seem that, okay, post-editing needs to be automated. But because machine translation is bad. something like that.
Mhm, mhm.
But if you look at the data, you may see that it's a different picture. You may see that, say, these bad translations need to be improved with some either improvement of machine translation, automated postending. It may be a very small part of all words. But the bigger problem maybe is that the data is chunked when it gets into the system by TMS. And that's the reason why both machine translation and editors have lots of problems, because they see those chunks of text, they don't even have any idea how to edit them. And problem is different. It's not AI problem. It's more like data ingestion problem.
Yeah.
And the only way to figure it out is to look at the data. Otherwise, we'll end up, spending lots of our time and customer money on implementing some AI solution, which doesn't address the real problem, and everyone will be disappointed.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
We even to add to that, we even developed a procedure. We call it localization checkup. It's like in a hospital, when you come and saying, "Oh, give me a pill," probably they will not give you a pill right away. Even if you're, I don't know, something hurts, they will tell you, "Look, we need to, to make some analysis and to make a checkup to see what's the reason." And that's what we do. We ask to export very specific data. It's not translation memory, it's just a little bit something more detailed, where we see through the all technology stack what may be the root causes of the problems our customer feels. And sometimes we say even, sometimes we say, look, we're a dentist and you have something with oncology, you need to go to a different specialist. Or
This strategy always works really well with my customers when I tell them it's your fault that we messed up. That's a really great strategy too.
Well, it's important. It's important to do that before before you take their money, because that's what we're striving to do, to make this analysis before, so that we can tell right away, can we help or not.
The segmentation issue is something that comes up with source contents in my realm too, and that doesn't even have anything to do with machine translation, but the quality of the translation can be completely foobar, even when you're working just with humans and the segmentation is messed up. So I'm not surprised that might be an issue that you run into, and it's kind of the thought process. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I want to second that. I would even say that even when it's not messed up, it's a big issue. It's like my observation is that, so in localization, everyone thinks in segments, right? And every translation management system splits text into segments, and then work in segments. And the main reason for that is to be able to do context matches, right? In context leverage, and to do fuzzies. But honestly, if we look at this type of what's going on today, in many cases, there's not so many in context matches as opposed to exact matches. There's not so many fuzzies used, because it's already machine translation is typically much better than low fuzzies. So this segmentation thing is now a legacy, and it's a major bottleneck to AI performance, because almost every major machine translation engine, I'm not even talking about LLMs, but even every major machine translation engine, they can do full text translation. If you give them full text, they do much better job than if you give them this text segment by segment. But most of the integrations in translation management systems, they sound it segment by segment, because that's how they work. And I think this type of uncaging language from these segment cages is something we all need to do.
And AI is going to be a lot better at that, and is basically doing away with the need for the segmentation. Am I extrapolating that correctly?
Yeah, it's just I would say that we may be already at the point where if you just find a way to avoid working in segments, you will get much better boost in machine translation or any other AI quality than from further customization or further technology. It basically starts to be like bottleneck.
Yeah. And the path to better quality in automated translation, does it lie in more data? Is the data having enough data? Is that what impacts the way forward and the progress, you think?
I think it changes, and when it was about domain adaptation of machine translation, it's very often having enough data. And the typical situation is that if you're an enterprise company, you work with a variety of languages. And then for some languages, you have sort of enough data. So you may have 100,000 segments or so, which is after cleaning, you will end up in having like 40,000, which is just enough for domain adaptation. I mean, to get good results. But for other languages, we have less. And we often seen that as a bottleneck where we could not go sort of custom machine translation route for, I don't know, English to Greek for some of the customers. Because for Greek, they have just, 20,000 segments. After cleaning, you end up having 5,000, and that's very, very few. I think it changes because now, especially with large language models, you need your data mostly to specialize the system, to explain the system, what's your context. And for that, you need very few segments. But they need to be very relevant and they need to represent your context. You need to make sure that all your requirements are sort of embedded in this data. So I think it shifts more and more from having more data to having better data. And to also sort of highlight it, emphasize it, I think with LLMs, they're more expensive to train. So what we sometimes doing when we're training things like automatic post-editing for our customers, they may give us 1 million segments. But if we train 10 epochs on 1 million segments, will be probably tens of thousands of dollars on LLMs. So actually we are reducing amount of data, but the goal is to keep the best data there.
How do you go about that? How do you select the best data?
Well, we're analyzing, in this particular case, we're analyzing, we're trying to get segments where we think that post editors really did lots of changes or something very important. So basically we do some sort of clever sampling of the data. I think we're very far from, finding the silver bullet.
That was going to be my next question, since you were talking about traditional machine translation a bit earlier, and then we're definitely, all we're talking about right now is AI technologies. In what way do you see traditional MT continuing to play a role in the future of localization, especially as these more advanced AI technologies come about?
Well, I think it's hard to say on the, it's hard to see beyond the horizon. Let's say, I think as of today, what we see is that the, problem which we likely will have probably for at least another half year is that large language models, they are too slow, too unreliable, and too frivolous in their output to be used in a safe manner without human review. That's why we anyway will stick to classical machine translation as a core of the translation. It's one thing. Second thing, as I mentioned, we run 95% of volumes we run through our platform. It's all real-time translation. And LLMs are so far from being real time, so that it's just not possible to use them for real time cases at all. So we sort of, it's not only about machine translation, it's also about if we need to do some manipulation with the text, we have to rely on older models like BERT and Laser and others. They're just faster and more reliable. And for translation, we see there are very few LLM specific use cases, like when you want to go between different Spanish dialects, for example, is one of them, or when you don't really have any data for training at all, and you want to just guide translation by your localization guide, that you can do it with LLMs. Everything else is cheaper, more reliable, and much faster if you use machine translation. And overall, I think it will be here to stay unless there will be a way not just fine-tune large language model, but also automatically distill it, basically to turn it into a machine translation model. If your task is to do machine translation, if this technology will be developed, basically something like very cheap automatic distillation of the model. But then there will be no difference. Then it's just, okay, you take this LLM, you supply your training data, and LLM decides by itself, or training algorithm decides by itself, okay, it needs to strip everything from this model except this simple, more simple transformer model which you need for translation. But I think that's beyond the horizon.
Okay. And what do you think of the route of tagging, a vectorized database backend engine to a large language model and letting the large language model make the decisions, but having it tap into a repository of machine translation, if you want, to a vector database?
That's, I think, a really great direction, because still the main repository for data today in localization is translation memories, right? And the way the matching happens, it's very simple. It's very simple algorithms, which probably 10, 12-year-old, maybe even older. And definitely having vector database and fetching data using vector embeddings is just much clever and better way to do that for matching. And we're adding this part to our platform as well, and I'm sure that we'll see that happening across the board with translation management systems as well. So when you have your data, you need to fetch relevant parts of what you did in the past from your memory.
Yeah.
You use embeddings, definitely.
Awesome. All right. Anybody, I'm sorry we're geeking out a little bit here, but I can't help but do this with somebody as savvy as Konstantin. So you'll forgive me my indulgence. Maybe we should switch back a little bit to what's everybody's reality a bit more, and talk about the potential of current MT tech, and in particular, I would like to know what your perspective is on the current variety of CAT tools that are out there. There's so many, and you've done a lot of evaluation with this, so maybe this is a practical way we can help a lot of people that are in the meeting today as to the choices they have, and what your assessment is of the best CAT tools out there.
I'm curious, so when you say CAT tool, do you mean this like of an editor, or just all in general, like translation management systems?
All that and all of the above. I think it all ties in together. So
let's say enterprise, Stefan.
Go ahead. Yes.
Maybe enterprise. Yeah.
Yes. Enterprise. Do what Michael says.
Yeah, sorry. Also, what is it? Enterprise.
Enterprise, yes.
Yeah, from an enterprise
Let's go on the
perspective.
enterprise level.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we there is a narrow definition of CAT tool as an editor, like which sits on top of TMS system to help people work with text. If we look like more holistically, I just think that we see some bottlenecks, and some of them we discussed related to segmentation, for example. And I think that's just, it has to evolve. Just because the bigger potential AI has, the bigger gap you have between what you can do in this CAT tool level of support, and sort of up to that point where, as some of our customers share, some of the end users or even translators may just go to ChatGPT because they don't have certain limitations they have in their CAT tools when they work with full text interface. So that definitely has to evolve. I think bigger question is how overall this new type of technology will change what people do, because CAT tool essentially it's like a driver's seat or interface for a human person to work with the technology. And I think that's maybe my personal belief, my understanding of what's going on is that large language models, they make expertise abundant and cheap. Like before that, without those models, to get a good expert in something, for example, in reviewing content of certain subject matter, you have to have a person who would spend lots of time, these 10,000 hours, developing themselves as a medical translator in a specific language pair. And then you have this huge fragmentation of whole labor market. And CAT tool is actually a tool for this person to add their expertise to the process. And this expertise, in many cases, this language expertise, subject matter expertise. So what I believe in is that this type of expertise will be universally available for large language models. And the main expertise which people will be able to contribute will be not subject domain expertise or language expertise, but expertise of a specific business context they are working in. And that would require very different interface, because it will be much more important to pull maybe data points from different parts of the business into this interface to be able to apply this LLM expertise in a better way. I don't know how it will look. I just see that the nature of work people will be doing will change a lot.
That's fascinating.
And that will.
It's a fascinating point, and I would love to pick your brain a little bit further about that, because I'm sure there's a good number of translators in the group here this afternoon, and there's definitely an existential question going on in the industry as to the role the translators are going to be playing in the future. And your answer just now kind of guides us towards what those possibilities could be. What else do you think could be possible for human translators to be involved in the foreseeable future? Do you have any other input when it comes to that?
Well, I think it may be the same which I said, just from slightly different angles. I think when you invite any expert, be it a translator or a consultant, to your business, then you typically value two things, and without one of them, it doesn't work. So one thing is just expertise, just experience, and another part is ability to apply this experience to a specific business context. And we probably all worked with some people who have lots of experience, but they just don't know how to apply it to specific context. They sort of have this one hammer, which they developed over their career, and they're just trying to hit everything with a single hammer. So that doesn't work. And I just feel that over development of these models, this general expertise is less important because it's more available through those models. They spend the 10,000 hours in every niche they could read about on Reddit. And now it's hugely important to be able to, like for translator, I think it will be more and more important to understand what's so specific about this business, about this specific audience which we're reaching with this message. Like if the translator is asked to translate something into Spanish in the United States, as some customers shared with us, there are no Spanish in the United States. There are at least six different versions, depending on what community you're talking to. And those questions should translator be asking, because general Spanish expertise will come from AI, definitely. And AI spent much more time reading parallel texts in the internet. But how to apply it, what's important for a specific business, so I believe in localization of the expertise, if you will.
Localization of the expertise, that's a good way to caption that. Are there new services in the pipeline with this continued evolution of localization? It's one of the things that I've been thinking about is that in the past, we've always kind of worked with a model by and large that employed English text as a source, and then we went to different languages with that. That's pretty much how it works around the world, in my opinion. And I was wondering what your view is on the possibility of, for example, in the future, creating content that won't even have to get translated. It will get created, in my vision, in 10 different languages. And when we're translating it in Hindi, it might talk about cricket. And when we're translating it in American English, or when we're producing it, I should say, in American English, it might talk about baseball, and it might be soccer in Spain.
But do you not think also a much more serious problem nowadays is the fly in the ointment, is the source text English written not just by an American or British or Australian, but German or an Dutch or Swedish or from wherever. These texts are getting worse and worse, unfortunately, and much more difficult for a translator even to understand, let alone a machine or a large language model. And this is also going to affect your large language models. They're going to be made a lot worse. I mean, the material is going to be much more unreliable. I think this is one of the biggest flies in the ointment at the moment.
Yeah, I so personally, I'm not so much afraid of sort of adding this type of low quality texts to the data the model is trained on, because if the training system is built in the right way, it will be able to sort of distill it internally to understand that, okay, we have now, instead of 3 versions of English, we have 56. It's all right. We have Netherlands English, we have German English, not a problem. But what's important is that in this situation, we cannot really rely on some shared context. And, there's famous phrase, make no assumptions when you work with humans. Well, make even less assumptions when you work with machines. And to what you said, Stefan, I think we anyway will have some source. It's not necessarily will be, say, American marketing copy, which we use as a source to make marketing copy for Japan, but it may be American description of marketing campaign in English. And then we will produce versions for different countries from this description. But anyway, there will be some source, because we, we're humans, we have a mother tongue, which we will use to describe our ideas and thoughts, at least until we got Neuralink, from Elon. But even then, probably will be some, Although, I'm looking at my kids
I have to try to talk
bilingual.
that out of my son's head on a daily basis, because he's ready to sign up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, Konstantin, can I ask though, I think along the lines of what Juliet was saying, though, the source isn't always one-to-one either, especially in marketing. You may be doing a blog for a country, and then you're going to do another campaign but there still has to be alignment of the tone. And so I find that a lot, right?
That's what I want to say next. So that if you think, when you ask large language model to translate something, that's actually, I think we're on the verge of internally calling it like T-word. So let me explain why. Because when we say translate, we're sort of trying to combine all possible reasons and purposes and business tasks of communicating across culture into a single verb. And we assume the person we're talking to, it will understand from some shared context what actually we mean. Well, if it's a machine, it will not. Basically, it's like, like you have a machine which basically learned on everything in the internet, including, Reddit, TikTok, and YouTube. And you're asking it to translate what it will do. In this thing, which I probably was talking about that at Lockword as well, but what you can try doing, instead of asking model to translate, to specify all that about source text, which for what product, for what audience, why, who actually has written this source text. And then ask to write a different text. Again, without any assumptions, just explaining, we want to solve the problem we have in Germany. And we want to sell this product in Germany for this audience, and it should have this type of, it may be English-speaking audience in Germany, it may be Spanish, it may be Arabic-speaking audience in Germany. Instead of just using this word translate, and just once you do that, you realize that all this context could not possibly be communicated by using the word translate.
Right.
But once you communicate all this context to the model, then you will see that what model does is pretty fascinating. And
what about other opportunities? Like, so for example, you have embedded text, you have charts and graphs, you have money, right, currency. I was trying to think of that word. But so you have all of these different opportunities. You have accessibility things. Like, I would love to see the large language, instead of calling it large language, but like the content model, really look for all the different implications for localization. Like there's an image.
It's very interesting.
Text, I'll give you that idea, and then you'll go bake $1 billion on it. But I'm just thinking about that, because I just think there's other when we talk about other opportunities for translators, my brain goes immediately to the context that they don't usually get if they're looking at it. In my just total humble opinion. So, there's just other things where, let's say you're a translator and you don't know that there's an offensive image. You don't know that what they're trying to do with this, or what you know, like, or understand maybe the buyer persona or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I just think you could definitely train a machine to look for flat files, to look for imagery, to look for, right, to look for what campaign it goes with or whatever. So
Yeah, totally. I think we're at the stage where if you read, publications on archive.org, it's already sort of should be possible. People know how to do that, but practically it's just not readily available as a technology. Like a few weeks ago, OpenAI rolled out this GPT-4V model, which can take images as inputs, but it's not available through an API, meaning that there is no, let's say it's not available to everyone through an API. Like, futures here, it's not evenly distributed. That's good.
Well, you're just
evidence.
across the bay, so
What-
you can drive to OpenAI and go ask them. You're right there.
Yeah, but so once it's available, definitely, and we're actually now what we're exploring is that we want to find a way to holistically evaluate language experience, because we have some situations when our customer tells us, look, we have a problem. Our translators say they make great translation. Our engineers say they make great, internationalized application. And our content managers say it's all local. But when it's sort of all combined, users sometimes don't really like it. So the question is, what exactly goes off? And of course, the ideal solution will be also to provide just the look of it to the model and ask, okay, what's wrong? But for that, we need to have this capability of providing this multimodal context. I think it will be like in half a year. It's something which we'll already be able to put into production, and definitely it all goes about, I think, like what post editors do. So they either fix mistakes in translation, or they do something with source, or they add some context. And with good enough machine translation, there's no need to fix mistakes in translation. And if source is good, then all they should do is provide the context, and then how to enable them, providing the context. And we see when we implement this automatic post-editing projects, what we started talking about with, sometimes we see great results, like when edit distance goes down significantly, maybe 25%, maybe 60%. Sometimes we see zero. In cases where we see zero, typically it's a situation when post editors, they have some context to do those edits, which is not available to anyone. And in hardest cases, it may be a in-house editor working 40 years for the organization, and there's just no place for this context except their head. Again, back to the Neuralink thing, before we got it. Even images will not help.
You think, Michael, you want to ask a regulation question real quick? I thought that's an interesting thing to end on.
Yeah, I'm going to try to play devil's advocate as much as I can, a little bit, in the sense that, Konstantin, I agree that the technology and the outcomes have come an amazing way. And I've been playing and anticipating this for a very long time from a creative perspective, right? Anybody who's a creative or creator, they have been waiting for the Gen AI movement to happen. Okay, the issue I see on a variety of different fronts is that it's reminding me of several things. Number one, the origination of the iPhone. It's also reminding me of commercials that used to say, hey, I'm an authority on a subject because I know how to look it up on the internet. It's this mentality that to me is a bit dangerous, especially when it comes to executive managements and folks that are in overlapping departments within those organizations on the enterprise side. And to me, there's this thought process out there that this is going to be like a fix-all, right? And to me, it's only going to create new, interesting problems, but nevertheless, it's going to create some new problems, and that means regulation. That means having to, you know, if you have everybody producing content using artificial intelligence, then the market's going to respond by realizing that there's way too much distortion and noise out there. So from a marketing management perspective, right, you're not going to be able, you're going to be looking for edge. And in order to get edge, you're going to have to think outside the box, and you can train these models to help you do that. But again, this is being utilized way too much from my perspective as an overhead cost-cutting way of thinking. And that is exactly the kind of thing that I completely think is the wrong direction for the industry to go, or to think it can go at this juncture. You know, we've been taught this about MT since the start, right? MT was supposed to be the you know, the thing that was going to solve all the problems. I was in the financial industry 15 years ago using Babelfish, okay, and it was the worst translation known to man. I never got a response from any of it. So the point is again, things have come a long way. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for progress and innovation, but I also like a bit of reality. Nobody knows how to apply half of the things that all of these things that you're talking about. I understand some of these things because we live and breathe it every single day, but there's tons of people out there that don't. And this is the problem, right? So it's again, and then you have regulation, intellectual property theft. You've got, you know, all these other things where again, it's being abused rather than it being used to add and be more scalable with personalization, from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, so what I'm thinking here is I can illustrate that this. So I would say it just. So when we work with humans, or when we work in the system where things done by human labor, we sort of just the laws we build, the legislation, everything is just built with certain assumptions, certain reliance on how humans work. And like in many of those cases in creative industries, it was like this type of proof of work, if you will, meaning that, okay, if it takes, you know, 50 years to learn painting like that, it must be valuable, and that's something we should be protecting, right? And now suddenly you can like write a prompt and have it done better than a person who spent all their life in doing that. I think it will make us rethink lots of things, and I believe there are certain ways for every of these problems which you mentioned. There will be definitely there will be a reasonable way to solve it. Like with yes, currently in like IP regulation is a very gray zone, I think, for large language models and for generative AI. But we see that something gets more crystallized, because when you want to sort of leverage someone's heritage or someone's past work to do your work, that's considered to be more and more to be something not good. So that even thinking you, DALL-E, if you're trying to say, oh, paint me like that person, it will refuse. It will say, look, would you be able, please, to define yourself, your style?
Stefan's a painter, you know that, right?
Yeah,
I'm a painter too, so you're talking right in my wheelhouse here. Anyway, Konstantin, I can't believe that we burned an hour just like that, and I think we've gone to half of what we had mapped out. But it's been a fascinating discussion. I don't know whether you realize but I typically get some people from Europe and Africa. This morning, I want to, or this afternoon, I should say, I want to shout out real quick Natalia Beltran, who's joining us from Sydney, Australia, believe it or not, and it's early in the morning, Saturday morning, I believe. Is that right, Natalia? So
yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yes, my boys are starting to wake up now. It's 6 o'clock in the morning.
all right. Thank you
Yeah,
so
no,
much.
but so happy to be here, honestly.
Thank you so much for making
Thank
the
you.
extra effort of waking up for us. We really appreciate it. Konstantin, I can't thank you enough. This was fascinating. And I really enjoyed it. I think everybody else did as well. We kept everybody in the room the whole full hour. So thank you. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend. And until next time.
Hey, Erica.
Thanks for organizing.
Hey, you're welcome.
Organizing
Thank you,
stuff.
Konstantin. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.